So we're talking about science and the spiritual, a missing language. And that title gets right to the heart of it. We often see this huge tension between science and, spirituality. But what if the whole conflict is really just a language problem? And let's kick things off with a quote from, well, Albert Einstein. I mean, you can't get much more titan of science than that, right? And listen to what he says. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. He calls it the source of all true art and science. That's huge. He's saying the same feeling of awe that drives an artist is what drives a scientist. Okay, so that just begs the question, doesn't it? What is this feeling? This sense of the mysterious that even the most brilliant, rational people run into? And maybe even more puzzling, why don't we have a good scientific word for it? Why is there this gap in our vocabulary? And that's really the heart of what we're digging into here. This unnamed feeling that keeps popping up for scientists, and the fact that their own vocabulary seems to fall short. And this isn't just an Einstein thing. Not at all. Look at Stephen Hawking. He talked about things that were beyond full comprehension. Or Neil deGrasse Tyson, who calls himself agnostic but is always seeking clarity about what's out there. They're all sort of pointing at the exact same thing, this intuition that science alone doesn't quite capture. Now, let's be super clear here. The problem isn't their science. Their science is rock solid, obviously. The issue is with their metaphysical language. They just don't have the right words, the right concepts to really talk about what they're sensing. So you gotta ask, where did this gap even come from? Well, it seems to come from what we could call the two-option problem. It's this binary, this either-or choice that Western thought has been stuck with for a long, long time. Think of it like a menu with only two items on it. Option 1, a personal interventionist God, a being that steps in and changes things. Option 2, pure materialism, the idea that there's nothing at all beyond the physical world we can measure. That's it. It's a really stark, black or white choice. And if you're a scientist, someone who feels this sense of awe at the deep, impersonal order of the universe, well, neither of those options feels quite right, does it? The middle ground, a way to talk about a foundational reality that isn't a person, it just wasn't on the table. It was completely missing from the conversation. But here's where it gets interesting. Some thinkers did find that missing middle ground. They found a whole new philosophical toolkit, but they had to look outside that classic Western binary to find it. And we're talking about some heavy hitters here. Physicists like Schrödinger, Heisenberg, even Oppenheimer, and philosophers like Schopenhauer and Emerson. So what's the connection? What do they all have in common? They all seriously studied Indic philosophy, things like the Upanishads and Buddhist thought. And what they found in these traditions was a framework that was just perfect for a scientific mind. Why? Because it was non-anthropomorphic. It wasn't about a human-like God. It was super logical, totally open to rational analysis. And, this is the big one, it was completely compatible with empirical science. It didn't force you into that old, tired conflict between religious dogma and scientific fact. This brings us to a really important term, trans-empirical. Now, this doesn't mean supernatural or spooky stuff, not at all. It just means something that's beyond our current tools of physical measurement, but still works perfectly with everything we can measure. It's not against science, it's more like a bigger box that science can fit inside of. And this is what we can call that missing middle ground, metaphysical rationality. It's a game changer. It's the idea that you can use pure logic and reason to explore the very foundations of reality without needing to rely on faith or dogma. Okay, so now that we have this new toolkit, how does science and metaphysics actually fit together? Well, the key thing to get is that they're not fighting. They're not in conflict. They're actually two different but complementary ways of looking at the very same reality. Here's a really simple way to think about it. Imagine they have different jobs. Science's job is to describe the surface of reality, the stuff we can measure. It answers what and how. Metaphysics has a different job. It tries to understand the foundation, the conditions that allow that surface to exist in the first place. It asks the big why question. And when you have both of those tools in your belt, suddenly everything clicks into place. You get this new kind of coherence. Your rational mind doesn't have to fight with that feeling of awe, that sense of the mysterious we started with. And this really gets us to the main point of all this. Rational people don't have to throw out the spiritual. They just need a way to think about it that actually makes sense, a framework that's compatible with reason.
The difference this makes is just huge. Without this framework, that sense of awe is just this weird, fuzzy feeling you can't really talk about. But with the framework, that same feeling suddenly becomes a legitimate thing to explore. It becomes a real object of inquiry, something you can actually investigate and try to understand.
So that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If having both of these toolkits, science and metaphysical rationality, gives us a richer, fuller picture of reality, then shouldn't our culture be teaching both? Shouldn't our schools make room for both ways of thinking? It's definitely something to think about.